As seen in the previous chapter, John Wick refuged with Bowery King in the underground while continuing to prepare himself for revenge on the High Table. John flew to Morocco to ask for freedom from the highest leader of the High Table, the Elder. After killing all of the Elder's aides, John finally could meet him. He was the successor of the late Elder. John immediately threatened the Elder with a gun and asked for his freedom, but the Elder answered that John would not get anything if he killed him and there will definitely be a new Elder who will replace him. The only way for John to get out of this was death. After hearing that, John triggered his gun and killed the Elder. Due to the murder of the Elder, Winston, as the manager of the Continental New York, was fired by the High Ruler of the High Table named Marquis Vincent de Grammont. Now Winston has become an excommunicado. He had lost his power over New York. De Grammont blew up the Continental Hotel New York and killed Winston's concierge, Sharon, who was also his best friend. In Paris, a former assassin named Kane, John Wick's former colleague, was summoned by de Grammont. He was once the High Table assassin and had retired. De Grammont sent him to kill John Wick. Kane initially refused because he had retired, but because de Grammont threatened to kill Kane's daughter, he had no other choice but to accept the mission. In Osaka, Japan, in the Continental, a man nicknamed Mr. Nobody was seen booking a hotel room for himself and his dog. The Continental in Osaka was led by a manager named Shimizu Koji and his daughter, Akira, as a receptionist. Akira told her father that everyone who was involved with John Wick would surely die. On the rooftop, it turned out that John Wick had taken refuge at the Continental and asked Koji for protection. John was an old friend of Koji. He told John that the New York Continental had been destroyed due to John had killed the Elder. Meanwhile, at the Continental lobby, de Grammont assassins led by his right-hand man, Chitty, had just arrived and wanted to meet the Koji. Akira then secretly ordered the staff to evacuate all the occupants of the hotel. After that, she told her father that the High Table messenger had arrived to find and kill John Wick. Koji was surprised to see Kane, who now worked for the High Table. Koji didn't want to give up so easily. He chose to fight the High Table and was willing to protect John Wick because they are good friends. The battle ensued. Koji and his guards were surrounded. Akira got the news that the hotel had been attacked. De Grammont's assassins were having a hard time dealing with so many hotel guards, and finally, Kane joined the battle. Despite his blindness, Kane was a skilled assassin. He was very agile and clever. He used doorbells as a sign of an incoming enemy. Akira and John were still trying to deal with the High Table assassins. Akira was shot, so it was certain that she would be a burden for John to take care of. Koji then told John to run away from there while he was going to take Akira away and bought some time for him to run. Before escaping from the Continental, John managed to kill several assassins roaming the place. While still using his gun, John also used a nunchaku in the battle. After successfully eliminating several assassins that were chasing after him, John finally met his old friend, Kane. A fight between them was inevitable. Both of them seemed to be equally skilled. Suddenly, the man from before, Mr. Nobody, disturbed the duel. At that time, the High Table had raised John Wick's bounty to $20 million. Finally, John met Mr. Nobody. He had no intention of wanting to help John Wick. He was waiting for John Wick's bounty to be raised and he will kill John himself. On the other hand, Koji finally faced Kane, who had killed all of his guards. Kane had to kill him because he had deliberately helped John. A fight between them ensued, but sadly, Koji had been wounded, so Kane had the advantage to win the duel. Sure enough, he managed to kill Koji. After killing Koji, Kane let Akira go because he also had a daughter and didn't have the heart to kill Koji's daughter. Meanwhile, John arrived at the train station and met Akira inside the train. She was injured and tried to escape too. Akira asked who the blind man was and John answered that it was his old partner. To avenge his father's death, Akira decided to finish Kane. In New York, Winston met with Bowery, and while staring at his hotel which had been destroyed, Winston told Bowery that he wanted to meet John Wick. On the other hand, the Harbinger, as the High Table emissary, advised de Grammont to be careful because according to him, the destruction of two Continental was actually not needed just to catch John Wick. Mr. Nobody was summoned by de Grammont. He was curious about how Mr. Nobody tracked John Wick's whereabouts. Mr. Nobody is asking for a reward of $30 million if he wanted to know, but de Grammont threatened him. he stabbed Mr. Nobody's hand with a knife to the table and gave him the option to yank out the knife for $10 million or tore his hand free for $30 million. Mr. Nobody then tore his hand free from the knife. John returned to New York to meet Winston. Winston told him that no matter how much John tried to bring down the high table, they will definitely find a replacement. The consequences were way too much for them. Winston advised John to do a duel with de Grammont using the old school style, but the condition was that the challenge had to be submitted by the crime family. Sadly, John had no family anymore, so Winston ordered John to improve his relationship with the Rosca-Roma. John then went to their headquarters in Berlin to receive another crest that marked his membership to the syndicate. When he arrived in Berlin, he wanted to meet with the leader. It turned out that Mr. Nobody had also arrived at that place. He reported to de Grammont that John was in a church in Berlin, but de Grammont said that if he wanted the money, then he had to kill John. The previous leader of Rosca-Roma had been murdered due to John Wick killing the elder. The previous leader's daughter, Katia, was given the position to replace her father as the leader of the syndicate. John asked for her cooperation to work together because they had the same enemy. John said that he wanted to fight the high table by ensuing a duel with de Grammont, but he needed approval from the syndicate to do that. Katia then decided to help John, but in exchange, he had to kill her father's killer, Killa. If he managed to do that, only then she would accept him back as a member of Rosca-Roma again. John was taken to Killa's headquarters, which is a nightclub. John finally met Killa, but there was also Kane already waiting for him. Turned out, Mr. Nobody was also there at that time. Mr. Nobody came to meet John Wick, so Killa invited them to play cards to determine who has the right to kill John. When playing cards, John gets the lowest card while Killa gets the highest. They then realize that Killa had tricked them and cheated the game, so for now, they decide to work together to kill Killa and his men. Killa ran into the crowd, but John succeeded to shoot Killa's buttocks, which triggered his anger and ensued a fight. John fell from the top floor, but he managed to survive, so Killa ordered his men to chase John. John couldn't match Killa's power because he was way smaller than him, but despite that, John still managed to turn things around to his advantage. After managing to kill Killa, John took his gold tooth as evidence for Katia. Meanwhile, Mr. Nobody, who had had the opportunity to kill John Wick, was prevented by Kane. John brought Killa's golden tooth to Katia, and finally, Katia accepted John as a member of the syndicate again. Katia then ordered Winston to bring John's duel challenge to de Grammont. De Grammont contemplated whether to accept the challenge or not, and finally, he decided to accept it. If John wins, he will get his freedom from the high table and Winston will get back his position and the Continental, but if John loses, then he and Winston will be executed. They too will discuss the rules of the duel, which will be carried out later in Paris. Near the Eiffel Tower, finally, the two parties met and discussed the agreement. Moderated by the Harbinger as the high table's emissary, the terms had been agreed upon. They would do a gun duel at the Sacré-Cœur church. If John did not come on time, then John and Winston would be executed, but de Grammont had the advantage in the duel. He was allowed to choose an aide in that fight, and he chose Kane to fight John. If John won, then he would get freedom and Winston will get back the Continental. John went to a church to pray. Inside, he met Kane. As old partners, they didn't expect to end up in a duel to death. The two of them were forced to do this. At the high table headquarters, the Harbinger warned de Grammont that he had just challenged the Baba Yaga and that he was in danger. Meanwhile, John went to Bowery's headquarters. Bowery gave John a couple of things for his fight. On the other hand, de Grammont was worried about John Wick, so he decided to raise John Wick's bounty. Whoever managed to kill John Wick before sunrise then will get $26 million. Before confronting all the assassins, Bowery gave John a gun and an armored suit. Bowery and Winston took John as close as they can to the Sacré-Cœur church. The communicator saw John Wick, so he spread the info to all the assassins to make sure John wouldn't make it in time to the duel's venue. The fight was inevitable. John managed to escape to the Paris roundabout, but he was continuously targeted by the assassins, including de Grammont's right-hand man, Chitty. John managed to survive. He was cornered by so many assassins, but he still managed to survive. Mr. Nobody asked de Grammont to raise John Wick's bounty again so that he would kill John Wick, but his request was not yet granted. Mr. Nobody then helped John Wick escape from all the assassins chasing him. On his way to the Sacré-Cœur Church, John was intercepted by many assassins who finally forced John to enter an abandoned building. Inside the building, Mr. Nobody requested de Gramont to increase John's bounty again, and in the end, de Gramont agreed. He increased John Wick's bounty to $40 million so Mr. Nobody would chase after John Wick too. There was a duel between John and Mr. Nobody, and when Mr. Nobody was almost beaten by John Wick, John saw Mr. Nobody's dog was about to be shot by another assassin, so John chose to shoot the assassins to save the dog and let Mr. Nobody go. The church was located above the hill, so John had to climb 220 steps, but he was again stopped by many assassins there. The sun would rise in 10 minutes, but John hadn't arrived yet, making Winston worried. John managed to beat all the assassins, but he met Chitty who kicked him down the stairs again. Kane, who wanted to go up, decided to help John, and finally, John and Kane worked together just like what they used to do back in the old days. Not only Kane, but Mr. Nobody also helped John Wick because he owed him for saving his dog. Kane used a pencil to finish off all of de Gramont's paid assassins, and finally, Chitty was killed after Mr. Nobody's dog bit him. In the end, John and Kane managed to get to the top just as the sun was rising. Finally, the duel was about to start. In the first round, they had to do a 30 meters duel. Both of them were shot in the arms, so the duel continued at 20 meters. John was shot in the shoulder while Kane was shot in his stomach. The duel continued again at a distance of 10 meters. John Wick was shot, which made him fall to the ground. In the final round, de Gramont swapped places with Kane because he wanted to kill John Wick by himself. Turned out, John hadn't used his last bullet. De Gramont didn't expect that John still had one more bullet in his gun, and John shot him right in the forehead, ending his life. The duel ended with John Wick as the winner. He was finally freed from all his bounty, Winston was reinstated to his position, and Kane and his daughter were freed. John sat on the stairs as he reminisced about his marriage and life. John finally collapsed on the stairs and was seemingly dead. Later, Bowery and Winston were seen bidding farewell in front of John's tombstone beside his wife's grave that read "The loving husband" according to John's request. In the credit scene, Kane finally met his daughter. Akira was also there, about to avenge her father's death. Then the movie ends,